Yes, yes, people. It's Jacob back on the one up top. Yes, I agree. It's been a minute. It's been a long time, man. I'm not going to waffle on about what I've been up to. Just know that I'm back. I've had to do a little bit of rebranding, a little bit of thinking as well. And to be honest, there's no better time than the present to come back, especially with what's going on at my club. But before I do all of that, if you're watching this, like, share, subscribe, do all of that. Make sure you put a like on it just so it helps the channel grow. And I'm not going to make any promises, but I'm going to get myself out there as much as I can. But you know as well as I do, life happens. But yeah, let's cut to the chase. So, in the round, the last time I spoke to you guys, I was probably having a meltdown about Tottenham. I'm back, potentially a meltdown about Tottenham. Now, sandwich between that, we've had, our worst league finish. We've also won the European trophies. So, swings and roundabouts and all that stuff. But instead of me going on about what's gone on, too tough about what's gone on in the past, let's talk a bit more about what's happening presently. First and foremost, we got to talk about what's happened with Ange. You got the Tottenham fan base split down the middle yet again, which helps Daniel Levy win because you've got Tottenham fans that agree with the decision. You got Tottenham fans that disagree with the decision. You got Tottenham fans that sit in the middle, and 1 minute they agree with the decision, next minute they don't. So with me, what I've done as I've got older, I've made decisions, but I make decisions based off of, thinking about what's gone on and taking a little bit of time to reflect rather than, sitting there and make a decision rashly. Now, when you look at it, and bear me a second, when you look at the decision that was made by Spurs as a club, um, first and foremost, as soon as I saw it, I thought to myself, like, Tottenham Hotspur, what a joke. These are the sort of things that, you know, we've made decisions on, and us as a fan base have gone mad, which has allowed Daniel Levy to divide and conquer. But I thought to myself, rather than making a video off the cusp, I'll do one after a few days of the decision. Especially now that it looks like Thomas Frank is on the cusp of joining Spurs. Now, when you look at it, my advice to every Spurs fan that's watching this, or any, fan of a club that loses a manager, right? Or a decision has been made. What you got to do is take the emotion out of the decision. Now, first and foremost, when I saw the decision being made, Andrew's still on holiday, so Twitter was making a lot of noise. But the way I compare it to, if I'm going to use an analogy, to compare it to what goes on in people's general life, yeah, is just imagine you've got a partner. So whether you've got a partner or not, I don't know. I'm going to speak from a man's perspective because obviously I'm a man and I'm a straight man. So if you're in the same position as me, imagine you're with a woman and you've been with a woman for the best part of 2 years, right? So in them 2 years, genuinely, you're thinking to yourself, I'm not sure if this relationship works. So, you find yourself arguing with her all the time. You find, not taking accountability. You find yourself stressed all the time. You find that you want to go and link up with the boys rather than chilling with her on an evening. There isn't, in the round, everything is bad. However, your mind is occupied by what's good. So there's been the odd occasion where you can think about Valentine's Day, where you've had a great weekend, or you had a good Christmas with a family, or something like that, or something. You know where I'm going with it, and you say to yourself that you're going to hinge your relationship based off the good times rather than the bad. So over the 2 years, you can say it's been good for a collective of 3 months, but in the round, it's been bad for another, 21 months, right, in that relationship. So if you go and speak to your friends and family, you go and speak to your mum, you go and speak to your dad, you go and speak to your siblings, you go and speak to your friends or whatever, and they say, I've had 3 months of good and 21 of bad. Do I stick with that woman? 9 times out of 10, they're going to say no. And I can't think what could be good in a relationship in 3 months to outweigh 21 months of negativity and badness and all that. Right? So imagine the badness is like she's not taking accountability. She's not saying sorry. Um, she's cussing you to all her friends. There's times you suspect her of cheating even. She's just making your life miserable for 21 months. But for 3 months, you can't cuss her for it being bad. Now, an idiotic man or an unexperienced man. So if you're a man that's hasn't been in too many relationships, you're going to let that fly because you're going to have that mentality of, you know what, she's capable of bringing that goodness to me. But someone that's experienced is going to go, well, hold up, like 21 months of badness. Am I going to stay with her for another 2 years and experience another 21 months of badness? But as long as we have a good Christmas or a good Valentine's Day, that's calm. Of course you're not. So with me, I thought with my brain and thought to myself, Ange has brought the biggest trophy that I've seen in my lifetime. He's ended a 17-year drought. Now I compare that to me being with that woman and going to the Maldives. We go to the Maldives, she's paid for it. She pays for everything. I've got my feet up. She's massaging me, doing all the rest of the stuff. You know what I mean? So for that week or two, what a woman. But then you come back from the Maldives and you spend 3 months thinking, what an idiot. Now, does that mean that because you had a good holiday, you're going to stay with her if she spent the 3 months after that driving you mad? She's driving your mental health through the roof. You're staying at your friend's house on the sofa because you'd rather do that than stay in the bed with her. Why are you staying with her? So if you look at that logic and look at what's happened at Tottenham, as much as I can't stand Daniel Levy and the Enoch group, you've got to understand where it's come from. Because they've brought us that European trophy, yeah? Ange has, yeah? Brilliant. He'll always be remembered. He'll be remembered for me. He'll be remembered with my son. Right? Because we were jumping around doing the madness. Probably the best day as a Spurs fan with my son anyway, and one of them ever, right? And then on top of that, when he first came in, we had that 10-11 game spell where we were top of the league. Everyone's thinking, oh, can Ange, win the league without Harry Kane and all that stuff? But sandwiched between that, it got to the point where I became disillusioned with football. I started looking at it thinking, is this what we're doing? Like, I'm watching Tottenham and I'm expecting us to lose. So when we have a good 20 minutes in the game, I'm like, all right, cool. I'm not gassed or anything. I'm not jumping around. Even my kids are questioning me. Like, Dad, are you sure that you support Tottenham anymore? And I'm like, of course I support Tottenham, but I'm just used to losing. I remember a game where we played Aston Villa just before the Europa League. I think it's either the final or the semi-final. I can't remember. I think it was the final. We rested a bag of players. We actually played it right for Aston Villa for 20 minutes, but I just sat there thinking, I was sitting there scrolling through my phone. And my son was like, you're not watching the game? I'm like, yeah, I'm watching it here and there. Why? Not because, of anything apart from the fact that I know we're going to lose. Angie's going to set us up badly. We've took out a load of players and we're just going to lose. There's no sense of direction. There's nothing. So... But when we played like Bodo Glimt and then we played Frankfurt and then we won the Europa League, cool. I look at it and think, well, Ange knew how to adapt when it favoured his job, yeah? But when it favoured the Premier League and our reputation as a team and a club, how come you couldn't adapt? Because I didn't see that adaptation, if that's a word, I can't even think, yeah? When we were playing league games and we were getting spanked by, any team. Bournemouth, comfortable, beating us. Aston Villa, comfortable. Everybody beat us comfortably to the point we finished 17th. Yeah? Now, banter, I'm sitting there with Arsenal fans, Man United fans, Liverpool fans even. Well, not so much Liverpool fans. Teams that haven't won anything in the Premier League. And I'm laughing, going, we finished 17th and won a European trophy. I had my laugh, I had my banter for 10 days, celebrated it. But then when you sit down and have a little think about it and gather your thoughts, you're thinking, we're lucky that we won that. Now, what I want to allude to is that I'd say 80% of Tottenham fans, not just before the final, throughout the season, wanted this guy gone, because it got to the point where everyone was saying, Levy hasn't given him the players, injuries, all of that. But then next thing you know, it's like we're like 15th and we're losing every game, and we brought Van der Ven back, we had Romero back, you had all the other injuries coming back, and we're still getting beat. So it got to the point where a lot of the fan base wanted this guy gone. And all he kept saying is, things like, it felt like he spent more energy trying to outwit the media in conferences than actually trying to outwit managers in games. So it's I feel a lot of Spurs fans are putting emotion into it, because when I found out that he's got sacked, emotion was all about it. But then when you think about it, if Ange lost that final, he would have got sacked and we would have been alright with it. But because we won one game that brought us a great trophy, everybody's crying about it. But this is where I go back to the woman analogy. It's like, just because the woman gave you a great week in the Maldives doesn't mean you need to go on and keep the relationship going. Just accept that it was a good week, but this relationship don't work. It only works in spells. If you're a man like me, would you want to spend 10 years with your woman knowing that 80% of that relationship's going to be miserable? Of course you wouldn't. If you do, then you're an idiot. So it's one of them ones, like, when you look at the decision that Daniel Levy's made, I can't stand him. But business-wise, I can understand it. Yeah? Thomas Frank isn't what everybody wants, because everyone's looking at it thinking, well, we're in the Champions League. We've just won the Europa League. Give Ange 6 months or whatever. That's fine. But when you look at Man United and what happened with them, they won the FA Cup. Much bigger club than us. They won the FA Cup with Ten Hag. They won the Carling Cup before that. And they were like, you know what? Man United fans were like, give this guy a new contract. Give him a new deal. Give him the players that he wants. He went to spend a load more money. And then we realised, well, okay, if you take the cups away, Ten Hag ain't that great. And then what? They ended up sacking him. And now Almiron's been left with a load of players that he probably doesn't think are good enough. Man United fans know ain't good enough. But because you got hyped about a cup, you gave him the money. So Daniel Levy's probably looked at that and learnt from it. Now, if we got to the point where we kept Ange and then we found ourselves in 14th, 15th, does the credit from the Europa League give him any more time? I doubt it. Even those Spurs fans that would have cried or jumped around with their kids or went to Bilbao, if we were 13th in November and Ange got given 200 million, let's say, and given loads of money, we'd all be on the same wavelength. But I'd be saying to all of you, but you lot were crying when you find out that he might get sacked. Now that he's kept his job and been given a 200 mil, you want him out by November. That's your general football fan. If you're a football fan and you don't think you're fickle, then don't chat rubbish to me. Every football fan has got fickleness to him. So at the minute, everybody's going mad. He's probably going to get to the point where Thomas Frank's somehow going to get booed before, he ain't even done anything. But if Thomas Frank comes into the Spurs squad, gets rid of people that we don't really want in the team, and he brings in a couple of players, let's say he brings in Mbuemo and all these guys, and then all of a sudden, come November, December, January, we've qualified for the next stage of the Champions League, and we're in the top 4, top 5. People are going to feel sorry for Ange, but they're not going to be crying anymore. That's the way that football works. But on the flip side, if Thomas Frank ain't doing great, on Daniel Levy's head be it. But I think it's a decision based off financials, which is always with Daniel Levy, because if we're playing football like the way we were last season, you're going to have less bums on chairs, right? And the bums on chairs are more important in the Premier League than they are in Europe, because even if you win the Champions League, your club plays, what, off the top of my head, 10 home games? Right, so Daniel Levy gets the money for 10 home games. The Premier League, which is your bread and butter, that's 19 games. So in order for him to fill the stadium with those 30 games plus your FA Cups and your Carling Cups, if you get into late stages and you got home games, we're talking 35, 40 games where Daniel Levy needs a full stadium. Is that going to happen if we're still playing the same way Ange was in the league? No chance. Even if it's the same way we played in the final. Unless you're getting the results, people ain't turning up, man, unless they're from South Korea. So, I get it. the geezer won us a league, but do I feel confident that Ange was going to take us into next season, regardless of who we played, yeah, and all of a sudden not lose 22 games in a season? He might not lose 22, but if someone said to me, put 50 quid on a number, I'd say we might still lose 14 because I don't think Ange sets us up properly defensively unless he needs to, So I look at it and think in the games that we've needed to set up defensively and Ange not to be so stubborn is when we're getting to the latter stages of the Europa League. But there was a time where I was looking at Ipswich. They were 7 points behind us, and I'm thinking Ipswich win this weekend, we lose, it's 4. But we got lucky because Ipswich would lose their game and we'd win. So you got to 10, and then you're like, all right, cool, we can breathe easy. But if it's the other way round, what we're doing then is Ange going to prioritise the Premier League? Because if he prioritised the Premier League to get results like he did the Europa League, we might not have won that. So we've got to look at it logically. Ange realistically should have been sacked ages ago. And as much as I don't like to give Daniel Levy credit, you've got to give people credit from learning from mistakes. So there was one point I think we were 14th, 15th, 16th in the league. But Ange is doing okay in the league. So Daniel Levy's kind of learned from the Mourinho and kind of said, look, I'll give you the opportunity to win that cup, but you lose that cup, you're gone. Fortunately for Ange, he won the cup. He won it in his second season. But you still got to go because you can't have that league form. It gets to the point where forget women, let's look at a job. If you're in a job and your 20% of your week is productive, but that 80 isn't, you ain't going to keep that job. It doesn't matter whether you're a binman. It doesn't matter whether you're an operations manager. It doesn't matter whether you're a cleaner. If you're only productive on the Monday, but Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you're not good at your job, you're going to be put on some sort of, performance plan, or if you haven't passed your probation, you're going to do that. So if it gets to the point where your employees give you a chance, knowing that it's only Mondays that you're productive on average, but then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, nobody's happy with your performance. It doesn't matter if there's one day or there's 1 week where you're a cleaner and you have cleaned the building immaculately. What about the other 4 days? The other 4 days, there's rats, there's mice, there's insects, there's all sorts. But on a Monday, looks nice. You're going to that house on a Monday, it looks like a palace. But on Tuesday, even though there was a mess there, it's still a mess when you left. We can't keep you on anymore. We're going to need somebody that's a little bit more consistent. And I think that's what the owners are looking at, I think that now that we're in the Champions League, they're looking at it thinking, if we keep Ange with that league form, we're not going to go and win the Champions League to stay in it. Let's be real. It doesn't matter who Tottenham sign or who we bring in. Are we going to stay in the Champions League by getting top 4 based off the form of last season? No. So are we going to win the Champions League in order to get there? No. So Daniel Levy, financially and for the stature of the club, has been craving Champions League football consistently since Pochettino. Pochettino was a yes man, worked with weak resources, got us in the Champions League football, got his money, which enabled us to build a stadium. Is Ange going to do that based off last season, regardless of him winning a cup? A cup is, you can win 6 or 7 games and get to a final and win it. You can't win 6 or 7 games and do well in a league. You're going to get relegated. You're going to be a mid-table team. You're going to finish 8th if you're not winning more games than you're losing. So I just think it's based off of that. A lot of people, I can't stand Daniel Levy and I always want him out. But for me, if it means that he's made that decision to bring Thomas Frank in order for us to be, reputation-wise, a lot higher in the league, a bit more solid defensively, if he becomes, it's giving me a vibe of, let's hope he's another Poch. So imagine he comes in, he's a steady Eddie, he's managed to get Brentford in the top 8, top 9 with very limited resources. So Daniel Levy's looking at thinking, well, if this guy can get us in the top 4 or the 5th consistently with the amount of money I'm going to give him, then I can sell the club. Now, if that's what Daniel Levy's thinking, bring in Thomas Frank. Because I think Daniel Levy wants to sell this club in the next 2 to 3 years at its optimum. So if you said to Daniel Levy, Thomas Frank is going to come in 2 to 3 years' time, he's going to get the good feel factor, he's going to fill stadiums, he's going to get us in the Champions League football, and, you know, essentially there's going to be one good cup run or two good cup runs, whether it be in Europe or domestically, he'll bite your hand off, because if we didn't win the Europa League last season, we were nowhere near that. We've got to be real. I had to be real. You know, I was jumping around Postecoglu, loving the guy. You know, Austin's going into his playground, gassing it. You know, loving it, taking him out of school. But we've got to be real. 22 games lost. There's managers that have lost their job for losing 22 games all round. So cup competitions, in the league, whatever, lost the job. This geezer lost 22. Effectively, if it weren't for that one night, that was the worst season Tottenham have ever had. Tottenham have had worse seasons and got relegated. Think about that. So I'm not going to be sitting on the fence. It's one of those, if I'm going to be honest with you, because he's won such a prestigious trophy and he's done it for a club like ours that don't win anything, the conversation would have been simple for me. You know, I'm going to give you up until sort of October, November. You, as a manager, he would have been a performance plan. So we'll see it month by month. So if we got to the start of the season, we go into the internationals, and Tottenham are 8th, no problem. We come out the internationals going to September, Tottenham are 5th. It gets to the point where we get to November, you're 8th, and it gets to the point between 8th and 5th, we're fluctuating. Will he lose his job? No, because you're in a European spot. You know, we're not going to sit there and say top 4 is the be all and end all. If you fall just short, okay, we can understand it, depending on how much money you spend. But if it gets to the point where you're 15th in August, and then you're 13th in September, and then you're 12th, if there's a bad 3 months, you got to go. And I'm sure Andrew would have took that. You know, he'd have got to the point where he would have brought in players carefully, or you'd have a little think. You know, if I'm Ange, do you even take that deal? Because if I'm Ange, with everything that's gone on, you know, the fans calling him a fat, you know what, you've got the players, some of them not performing for him, even though they're behind him, letting him down. Daniel Levy not backing him in January, even though he had all them injuries. I'd have left. Like, you know what I mean? I'll compare it to a normal job. If I'm in a normal job and I know I'm doing okay, but everyone's giving me grief and my mental health suffered and I'm stressed, people being racist towards me, taking a mick out of my colour or my size, and then all of a sudden I'm the reason why that business has gone from here to here, I'd think about just going there and then. You know, I know it's a lot less complicated for me, but I'll just be on Indeed looking for a job, have myself set up. As soon as I reach that target or climax that target, I'll see you lot later. Middle finger up to the lot of you. That's what I would have done. I remember Tony Bellew saying about that. That's what I'd have done. And should have just gone, right, drop the mic. See you later. Everyone disrespected him and he done something that no manager has done at Tottenham since 1984. You know, so yeah, we've got to take the emotion out of it. You know, for me, everyone's emotion is just all over the place. You've got players that are getting emotional. You know, I'm looking at some of the players and I get it. That was the gaffer and all of that. But again, they're getting emotional. I'm seeing all these, you know, tweets and posts about dear gaffer. I think I'm a bit old school, and it might sound harsh, but if you want to send a message to Ange, you got his number in it. Just give him a bell, text him, and just say, yeah, you know what, man, it's sad. See me, if I was a player, it wouldn't be going out on social media. I'll pick up the phone and go, hey, boss, what's going on, man? Yeah, it's mad. And then I'll be talking about all the memories, all that stuff, and I'll be, you know what, hey, keep in touch, man. No matter what goes on, no matter who the boss is, we'll keep in touch. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I've lost jobs where I like my manager. I've lost jobs where I like people that I work with. I ain't gone on social media and gone, oh, to all the people that worked here, like, oh, no. I've spoke to the manager and said, you know what, I'm going to miss you. Or I spoke to people that I've worked with, you know what, bro, like, it was good to... But we can always link up, man. Do you know what I mean? We can always go, you know what, I'm going, you know, it's sad that I've got to go, but, you know, Nando's next week, Nando's next month. Let me know when it's your birthday. What Why are you going on it? It's all attention. If I'm honest, people might hate it, and if you want to comment on it, cool. It's all attention. Every day I see a different player. Dear Gaffer, you ain't even tagged him in it. You know what I mean? Now you get them people that go on Facebook and it's like, oh, I miss this person. Or they're saying happy birthday to their mum. You're saying happy birthday to your mum. She's not even on Facebook. And if she is on Facebook, why ain't you tagged her? just send her a message. If it's my mum and it's happy birthday, when I put a post up about my mum, it won't be like dear mum. It's more like, hi everybody, it's my mum's birthday. Wish her well. So then when people are like, oh, happy birthday to your mum, I'll sit there having dinner with my mum going, oh, look mum, remember him at school? Yeah, he's messaging you saying happy birthday. You're literally going, dear Gaffer, and I'm looking at all these posts and I don't see Ange Postecoglu tagged. Has he even got socials? I doubt it. So it's like, message him then. But then it's all for the fans. It's all like, for everyone to go, this, I'm hurt as well. If you were that hurt, yeah, before you could have won that trophy, yeah, you lot were 17th. Now, if you didn't want Ange to go, you lot should have performed better. And if you weren't happy with the tactics that were being put out and you believed that it was the tactics that were the reason why Ange went, then you shouldn't be going, Gaffer, with your violins. It should be like, all right, cool. If I'm playing for Tottenham, yeah, and I'm being real, if I'm playing for Tottenham and I'm following instruction of this guy, but I'm looking around and seeing players thinking, all right, cool. It's not the best squad I've been in, or not the best squad I could be in, but this ain't the squad that should be getting relegated. If I'm looking at all the players and thinking they're good enough, I'm looking at it thinking, right, have I got beef with the players? No. All right, cool. Have I got beef with the manager? Nah. Well, I've got beef with someone. It's got to be the players or it's got to be the manager, because Daniel Levy ain't telling us to go on the grass. Daniel Levy might not have put the best squad together, but it ain't 17th. It's 17th because either the players collectively haven't got the mentality to drag us out of there, or it's the coach. And it always sticks to the coach. So my thing is, if these players are like, Gaffer, I get it, because we won the trophy, but you'll never catch me understanding it if these same players want this guy to stay and we finish 17th in the league. Because if you want to be playing in the Champions League, you want to be playing Europa League, you want to be going to a bigger club than Tottenham, let's say, you ain't going to get there by finishing 17th. You're not going to do it. You know what I'm saying? We haven't got the pool of Man United. So if we finish 17th and we didn't win the Europa League, all these players that are going Gaffer when he got sacked, would they be saying it now? I doubt it. There'll be a couple that might go, yeah. But that's because you're getting sold as well. There's players that I look at and think they're a lot better, but Ange doesn't really understand it. Look at Solanke. Solanke was playing for Bournemouth and got 20 goals in the season. Why? Because he was stuck in between the two posts and the area of the 18-yard box. They're getting crosses in, through balls, and they're literally saying, just like you would do with an old school Van Nistelrooy, stay in that box and we'll sort you out. But, you look at the Europa League final, I love Solanke for what he was doing, but he's just running around like a headless donkey. So when we get to the point where we're on a counter-attack or a cross goes in, he's sitting there getting a breather with Basuma and Bentancur and all these guys because he's knackered. Whose decision's that? So if it's Solanke's decision to be running around like a headless chicken and it's not Ange's, Ange needs to be pulling him by the scruff of the neck and going, look mate, I don't know what you're running around like an idiot for. I need you in the box scoring goals. But Solanke's doing it every week. So Ange wants this guy to press. But if you look at what happened with Salah was told to track back, press, all of that, and he respects Klopp so much. But when Slot said, don't worry about all that, you just start on the other end and bang goals, he's had the best season ever. In the argument for Ballon d'Or yet again, and he in his own words said, I just got told I haven't got to track back as much and work so hard, so then when we're in them opportunities to score goals, I'm there. We should be doing that with Solanke. Like, he got 9 goals this season. I'm not sitting there saying he's a replacement for Harry Kane, but he's in a team that understands his strengths. 15 goals minimum. Facts. He got 20 at Bournemouth, and Bournemouth played some wicked football. But they were mid-table side, and he had a blinder of a season, and he was pressing, but not like he's for Tottenham. Like Tottenham, he might as well play centre midfield. You know what I mean? So, yes, but there's a lot to speak on. Another point I'll say. I'm going to wrap up shortly. Is like, if let's say Ange got the sack today, so he won the Europa League but finished 7th. Yeah. Of course, we'd be a little bit more annoyed because we're like, come on, man, we finished seventh and won the Europa League. However, I do a bit of reverse psychology, yeah. So comment and like and do whatever you need to do in under this video, and I'm done. If Ange loses his job, which he has done, yeah. Let's imagine the whole of the Premier League, yeah, or the whole of La Liga or Italy, all of them ain't got a job, ain't got a manager. Sorry. So imagine they all lose their jobs. The managers go into a pot, and it's like, right, a club decides, I want that guy. Does Ange go to a bigger club than Tottenham based off the 2 years that he's had at Tottenham? So he finished, in the Europa League spots last season, this season 17th. Where does Ange go? Now I'm gonna base it on the Premier League. If Eddie Howe has a bad start, all of a sudden he's 15th in the league. Do Newcastle go for Ange? Probably not. The stature of the club, they've just won a Carabao Cup. They might go for Ange, but is it do they go there and do they get Ange and get excited? Shout out my Geordies. I know a few Geordies. They're not having Ange. Is Eddie Howe a better coach than Ange? You'd like to think so. Over the 2 years that Ange has been in the Premier League, he's probably spent as much money as Eddie Howe, maybe more, and Eddie Howe's definitely got better results. So does he go to Newcastle? No. Unai Emery, if he loses a job at Aston Villa, does he get a job there? No. You know what I mean? Unai Emery got them to a quarter-final Champions League, respectful performances against PSG, on another day they could have knocked PSG out and had a memorable time of it. So, but does he go there to replace Emery? And if he does, are the Villa fans happy? No. Why? Because of how we performed in the Premier League. If he goes to Villa or Newcastle, or he goes to, let me think of someone else, Everton. Someone that's on an even kill with Spurs in terms of history, and let's say, yeah. None of those clubs are going to take Ange unless he guarantees them to win a trophy. So, Everton fans might take a 17th and winning an FA Cup or, a Carling Cup, or if they're in Europe, a European Cup. But in the round, I know a few Scousers that support Everton. They're not good, like that. They'll take the cup, but then once they take the cup and they've had a few beers and they've, took the mick out of Liverpool fans for a season, is that what they want though? You're not going to. That's bad form. So you can't guarantee that your manager, if you won the cup that season, is going to do it next season. So Ange would have to either finish top 4 for Tottenham fans to be sweet, or win the Champions League, which, we're not going to play Bodo Glimt in a quarter final. Bodo Glimt, people are saying it because of no one really knows about them, but they beat Lazio, they beat Roma. I've got Arsenal fans that are cussing Bodo Glimt, but it's like they beat teams that are better than PSV. And when you beat PSV 7-1, you were gassed. So, swings and roundabouts again. But going back to what I was saying, I don't believe Ange gets a better job. So regardless of what he does, I think, unless he won the Premier League, which he's not going to do when we finish 17th, Ange would have to win the Premier League or the Champions League to get a better job than Tottenham. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's not going to. Celtic, massive club, but it's an easier job. Let's be real. If Stevie G's gone there and dethroned Celtic, and then he comes to the Premier League and Saudi Arabia and can't handle it, that tells you everything about the Scottish League. And even in the Scottish League, Ange had a host of injuries and everyone's like, oh, the board aren't backing him. But he didn't need to be back because the league's that easy. When he's come here and they realise that his training methods have again caused injuries, he's caused his own problems. So, to end it, we've all got to remember that at one point in this season, we were all, at some point, not at the same stages, at some point we were all Ange out. I can go back to previous videos, I can go to WhatsApp groups, I can do the lot. And I was saying, Ange out. How has he still got a job? How has he still got a job? But then the only reason that he won the Europa League, as much as we hate to say it, is because Daniel Levy was like, right, as long as you don't get relegated, you better go and win that cup. And regardless, I'm going to get rid of you anyway. I had a lot of Tottenham fans that were on socials going mad saying, "Oh, I want Ange out. I'd rather Ange gone and us don't progress in the Europa League." But then when we go and win the Europa League, they've got their tops off, singing Ange and getting tattoos and that. So it's like at one point you were thinking logically, and then the emotion took over. Regardless what goes on in your life, don't let emotion take over from logic. There's so many things I've had to go through in my life here where I've just thought of emotion. I've just sat there and thought, oh, but you know what? He was good to me one point. She was good to me at one point. Oh, but you know what? He gave me a pay rise. Stop doing that. Logically, it made sense for me to walk away from that job, to walk away from that woman, to walk away from that friend. And when I look back, that should have happened 10 years ago. But I've only started realising it now. So my logic, when it comes to football, when it comes to life, take the emotion out, think logically, let logic run things first. And then when it gets to the point where logic is different to emotion, that's probably when you know you're right. Use logical first, man, because running with emotion doesn't help. I wish Ange all the best, as long as my memory is good in the next 20 years, as long as God blesses me with life, I will always remember that guy. And, I can understand why the neutrals love him. I love him. But at the same time, business is business. And if it's going to be Thomas Frank, I'll welcome him in. And we've got to understand that just like that woman, you can either have Ange you can either have Ange as your missus, yeah, and he brings you good nights, good weekenders, wicked holidays, but causes you stress. Or you can have Thomas Frank, who when you come home, he's making you homemade apple crumble. When you come home, he's got your cooked meal. When you come home, he's cleaned up the yard. When you come home, he's made sure that the washing's done. When you come home, he's making sure that you've had a good day. That's the missus that you want. You want the missus that brings what? Stability. And that's where Daniel Levy's looking at. So think with that rather than that. All the best. Have a blessed day. Love you all. I'll start bringing out some more content. I've got a few more channels that I'm opening up as well that's, either to do with football or not. But I'll keep you guys posted. But yeah, love you all. Jacob on the one up top. Keep liking, sharing, subscribing. I'll see you guys soon.